Okay, our boy Brady, how are you?
Doing very well. Doing very well, guys. Thanks for having me. It's a privilege to be here. Excited for this.
Oh, of
So,
course.
so you're Muskoka, right?
Yeah, I'm living in Muskoka. I'm not from here, but I've been living here the last, I guess, year and a half. And I always tell people they're gonna have to get me out of here in a body bag because I'm never
Oh, it's
leaving.
the best.
Yeah,
Ty, you've never been in Muskoka. That's where I live in Huntsville for maybe like 6 months.
okay.
Where are you?
I'm in Gravenhurst, but
Okay, yeah,
I spent some time in Huntsville too. And I lucked out this summer. I got a call from Sam Gagne, and he's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
"I know you're around the area. You want to help us run some ice?" And got on the ice. Tavares was out there, Horvat, bunch of guys, and as I'm sure people are going to hear my story, it's been a pretty crazy turnaround. I think that not too long ago, that was the furthest thing from my mind ever being on the ice, let alone with those guys. So Muskoka's been really, really nice to me. It's a beautiful area and a place where I've been able to get my life back.
Nice. Yeah, Gaggy's a top-notch guy. I got to play with him in Edmonton, and we had a lot in common. And then, yeah, like he did he start the Muskoka camp, and like did he do like a week of all pro guys? And is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I guess. Well, they had stuff going on all summer where I think Adam Oates was up here and doing his thing. And I guess for the last 3 weeks, they just needed someone to run ice. And like I didn't know him from a hole in the ground. He just knew I was in the area doing stuff, and he invited me out. And it was kind of like a test run. They had somebody else out there. I just went and introduced myself to everybody because it's like I feel like it's one of those things you kind of got to be accepted into. These guys skate together every day for months and months, and I got a call like shortly after from him, and he's like, "Hey, you want to come back out Monday and
Nice.
until we leave?" And I was like, "Absolutely, I'll be there. I'll be there
100%.
every single day."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
I think I don't know if it was with those guys, but I saw in one of your videos, you jumped in to do a little bag sesh.
Yo,
I was like,
man.
oh, good for you.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I'd been watching them do it, and the day before I had kind of said to Gags, I was like, maybe one of these times I'll hop in. And it was really the last day where everyone was going to kind of be there before guys started to peel off to go to camp. And they started, and he led the way, of course, and there was like 4 different groups. And after he went, he was, catching his breath. He's like, "So is today the day you're gonna hop in?" And I was
Called you out.
how can I not, right? And
Yeah.
it's funny. I just made a video of it because I knew it was gonna, it's just one of those things I wanted to get on video because I honestly hadn't skated like that in 10 years. Like for no reason have I ever, wanted to jump into a bag skate ever. Not when I played, not now. But I'll tell you, it felt really good. But my pride led the way on that one, but I'm still feeling it, I think, a week later. So
I was gonna say it is like a good bag skate after a while is the most humbling experience in the entire world. Like I played hockey at 7 a.m. this morning, and I'm like, okay, play once a week, and like even after like a couple shifts, I'm like, how man? Like I'm dying.
I,
Like I'm
I
playing with
know.
50-year-old dudes that have better conditioning, better lungs than me right now. Like what am I doing?
I know for 3 days straight, I was tasting blood in my lungs. I gotta be honest. That feeling. Like I've not
Yeah.
had that feeling in so long. And though it hurt physically and carried on that pain for a couple of days, I'll tell you, it was totally worth it because it was such a release. Like, like we talk mental health and stuff, and different things and different ways to combat it, and things that work for us. And I know that that's something that works for me. And exerting that energy, and just feeling like you actually did something and you pushed yourself and you challenged yourself. At least that's how I feel. And it kind of woke me up. Like I just turned 35 like a couple weeks ago, and I remember when I was younger, I was like, 35 is old. Like, and now I'm that age, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm halfway to 70, and like, I want to get moving more. And I'm starting to understand how much it really played a part in my life right from day one of playing hockey, like how much that release really helped me. And then, losing it for a long time and getting back into it. It's been a blast. And yeah, I look forward to more of it for sure.
I can't
Yeah,
wait.
I was just talking. I had some buddies over here, and my one good buddy's a cop. I'll give him a little shout out to Willie, my boy. But he was just talking about his experience in the police world when he sees something traumatic. they're told to go long run or do something like that's hard cardio, whatever it is, just because like whatever the endorphin release or whatever goes on in your brain, it's really good for that. It's a little therapeutic and can kind of help you through that little bit of tough moment. So that makes sense.
Yeah, it's
That's cool.
interesting. It's funny. I just thought to myself, I was like, Brady, you're going to be the guy that's like 92 years old, like still on the ice, like playing with everybody. Like there's going to be like news stories about you and be like, but anyways, um, obviously there's a lot to unpack. Brady, we've had multiple discussions. I continually, I love what you do and I love what you've, turned everything into now. And I know this, you've told your story many, many times. And I know that, it could realistically, if you include all the details, it could take a while. So I would like, as hard as this may be for you, like I would like to, I guess we would love just a summary, like how,
Yeah.
just the, not just the bulk of it, but just I think you kind of know what I'm saying, but I like it's been a journey for you. So let's
Yeah.
best you can summarize it for us.
Yeah, give you the Cole's Notes version, and like you said, there's so many layers to it, and I think
Yeah.
it's important when people are listening to this or watching this that there's layers to all of our stories, and that all of us have different perspectives, and we all go through things, and we all internalize them and deal with them differently. And so when I talk about things in my life, people often say, well, I didn't go through something quite like you. And I always just stop them. I'm like, well, wait, like, just because on the outside it may look that way, just because you didn't go through this, maybe something you went through triggered the same sort of effects in your brain or whatever. So when I was, growing up out west, Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, that, my dream early on became to, was to play in the National Hockey League and be Pavel Bure more specifically. Should have figured out early on I was never going to be Pavel Bure, but that's okay. That was the dream. But at age 5, I started to play hockey, and that same year, like 2 really horrific things happened to me. First off, my mom left my dad and leaving him to be a single dad, and obviously really, really tough for a young boy not having his mom around all the time. And very shortly after that, I was sexually abused. And, I say that really openly today, but that wasn't the case. I just started talking about this couple years ago, and I've done so much of it, as you alluded to, Tyler, that, I've done work around it. So, I know it can be triggering for some people, but I continually work on that. So I'm happy to talk about it. But as I said, I didn't tell anybody. And so hockey, though I was idolizing Pavel Bure, I also started to realize how good I felt when I was playing hockey on the ice in my carport. Didn't matter, watching hockey, stick handling a golf ball. As long as I was stick handling, I was okay, because when I was doing that, I didn't have to think about my mom. I didn't have to think about what had happened to me, all that stuff. And, like you do anything for a prolonged period of time, you develop certain skills at it. And so I started to get pretty good at hockey, but I always had issues on the outside. Like I was an angry little boy. In hindsight, people look back and they're like, whoa, there was some major red flags going on. But we really thought it was just because your mom left and you had stuff going on, and just terrible stuff on the ice, off the ice. I was always getting into trouble, needless to say. At 16, I, made it to the Western Hockey League, and with the Swift Current Broncos. After one game, I got an assist. I quit because that was the first time I really started to become suicidal. Not for any other particular reason than I think moving away from home and being away from home, and being in Swift Current. There was some, I don't know, I don't want to say, but some things happened in Swift Current with Graham James years and years before that. I think it was kind of triggering for me to go there, hiding this secret stuff that had happened to me. And I was breaking down, and, not wanting to not just be in Swift Current, but just not wanting to be alive at all. So I quit, went back the next year. Nothing had changed. I ended up leaving that season for a couple of weeks because my mental health was not in a good place. And won the Swift Current Broncos Rookie of the Year. And I always just mention that because on the outside, that's like, holy man, you're doing pretty good, right? Like you're winning a Western Hockey League's team Rookie of the Year. But that year I had, I think, my first suicide attempt where I didn't really know what I was doing, but took a lot of pills and was calling my dad, and they tried to get me a sports psychologist, and I just wouldn't tell anybody what happened to me. And so I just kept internalizing it. I was like, I'm okay. I'm okay. At 18, I returned to the team. But prior to that, in the summer, I experimented with drugs for the first time, which was something I never thought I would do. You know, as I got into being 16, 17, you get into hockey. And back then, and I'm sure even now, alcohol was kind of a part of it. And you're hanging out with older guys and they're drinking. So I was using alcohol and I knew it was making me feel pretty good, masking all that pain, but still drugs were never going to be a part of my life until that summer. You know, I went to a music festival and made a decision that I never should have made and crossed that boundary and decided to try something for the first time. And that really put me on this trajectory of drug abuse for 12 to 14 years, however you want to look at it. Needless to say, I struggled throughout my WHL career in Swift Current, ended up quitting the team for good at 18 and the whole season, and went back at 19, begged Dean Chanel to take me back, and he took me back, and had nothing but troubles off the ice that year, missing practices because I'm hungover and doing things like just falling apart, not wanting to play hockey, not even wanting to be alive. The following year, I got traded to the Kelowna Rockets, and you know, I didn't even really care to play hockey, but I was like, oh, I got one more year left, and I'm gonna be maybe be a fireman, and you know, I'll ride it out. And I got there, and they had a pretty good core group of young guys, like Jamie Benn, Tyson Berry, Luke Shen, Tyler Myers. The list goes on. There was quite a few guys there that went on to the NHL, but I kind of took on this big brother role that year, and you know, for whatever reason, didn't really struggle too much off the ice and had a really good year offensively, and ended up signing with the Tampa Bay Lightning the next year, even after everything. And like, I'm skipping through a lot here. But you would think, okay, here it is. You have your dream almost on a platter. Like, sure, it's going to be hard work, but you're one step closer. I'm 20 years old. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, I don't even want to play hockey. Like, what am I doing? I started to abuse drugs really heavily, like every day. And, you know, wasn't going to training, wasn't doing any of that. And by the time it was ready to go to camp, I wasn't in very good shape, and I was in for a rude awakening, making the jump from the WHL to the AHL. I don't think people understand how good the AHL really is. I certainly didn't. And 4 games into my AHL season, I blew my knee out and was prescribed Oxycontin, and the rest was kind of history. Really important part for me is that people often think of painkillers as physical painkillers, and they are, and they work great. But for me, it was the emotional pain that they killed more than anything, and it's something that's not often talked about. I think from an educational standpoint, that's really important. Whether you're a hockey player or an athlete, doesn't matter. You could get hurt at work, and a doctor could be like, "Here, try this," and you're like, okay, I'm going to trust the doctor. And in some cases you should, but I think we need to be educated and ask questions before we start to take things, because I was not prepared for where that was going to take me. And if you guys want to hop in at any time, but from there, I'll try to skip through it real quick. I went from, you know, taking these pills from the doctor to becoming addicted to heroin, which was basically the street version of those pills that were given to me by the doctor. And it's, you know, just eventually happens, and found myself homeless and doing some horrific things to get what my body was telling me it needed, and ended up spending 3 years in jail. And, you know, that kind of brings us to 2020. And when I got out, you know, it was a bit of a struggle to begin with, but I decided that I wanted to start sharing my story because I thought maybe somebody out there needs to hear it. And I just borrowed a computer. I owned nothing. I had nothing. I was on welfare. Like, I was down and out, and borrowed a computer and just started firing off episodes of this podcast with horrible audio and everything else, and started to get some people to come on and get some big names to come on, and you know, started to take off. And but the big piece there before we end this story time here with me is that by doing it, I started to uncover these stories of other hockey players who had gone through similar things but were no longer with us. And one of them happened to be my roommate when I was in Norfolk with Tampa's farm team, Mitch Fadden, who was a WHL All-Star, a guy I played with in Norfolk, but against my entire life in minor hockey. We partied together, needless to say, struggled together. And when I found out that he passed away from a fentanyl overdose, it really kickstarted the movement for puck support and what I wanted to do. And from there, unfortunately, I just continued to uncover stories of players that are no longer here, ranging from 14-year-old girls up to NHL players. In 2021 alone, we had 11 deaths by fentanyl just in the hockey community, the youngest being a 14-year-old boy out in Langley, British Columbia. At, you know, grade 9 at a high school party, tried something. Now he's gone, right? Just a young player. So Puck Support wanted to start a nonprofit. Couldn't do that because I had no money. So I got a clothing line going. Story for another day, but Doug Gilmore's brother helped me out big time with that. Legendary Dave Gilmore. And in the meantime, decided how I was going to build this nonprofit. And just recently we got that status, and we're looking to help some people, not just hockey players, but use hockey as a vehicle to really ignite change surrounding mental health and substance abuse and substance misuse. So there's probably a lot that I didn't cover, but I was trying to get it out quickly for you guys.
Oh, geez, that was like, yeah, it's like so many questions, so it's going to be hard to like navigate through this. But like, what sticks out to me, I mean, you talked about change. I think that's one thing that I want to talk about, because like I listened to an interview with you. I think it was on CBC or something, and it was a lot of that, and even like relating to the World Junior stuff going on right now. Like, how do you see the change develop? Like, what in your eyes, where can we crack down? Where can we maybe put curriculum in? Because like you said something and I laughed, like when those videos come on in the locker room, guys grab their pants and they throw them out in the locker room and they lay down and just snooze fest during these videos that are supposed to be about substance abuse or gambling, whatever it is. It's so true. Like nobody pays attention, but it's almost like you need to grasp them earlier, or in a way that's more like serious, something. I don't know what it is. What in your mind, what is that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of layers to that, and I think there's going to have to be a lot of people involved. And for too long, there's been, and you look at anything, it does not just hockey or not just sports, but it always seems that there's always got to be like one person or one organization that's leading the way and doing all this. And anytime you really kind of dig through it, it's smoke and mirrors. No one's really doing anything. And as you talked about in those interviews, when I just shared my experience. They wanted to know, and I told them the truth. Like, I don't blame the CHL or Hockey Canada or anything for any of my issues. Do I think hockey played a part in it? Sure, because some of the stuff I went through as a rookie probably triggered some stuff that maybe didn't for other people, but it did for me. But overall, it saved my life so many times. Like, I don't blame hockey. I just want to try to make it better for the next generation is all. And I think talking about it, I've spent a lot of time like sharing my story and talking to young hockey players and junior players. And, it never ceases to amaze me that just me sharing my story, never without fail do I have multiple people from a group, even if it's a small group, reach out to me after in some fashion where they tell me that they're struggling or they're worried, or somebody in their family or something related to what I'm talking about. And, they never felt that they could talk about any of this stuff. There's been some unfortunate cases too. And I always share this story because it's extremely tragic and just so powerful for anybody watching or listening. Right. Because you hear my story, and I'm telling you, it was like 10 to 12 years of severe addiction from 2009 to 2020, like hard nonstop. And I overdosed so many times, I can't tell you. Tried to take my own life so many times, I can't tell you. But I know there's people that look at me and they're like, oh, well, it was long and it was drawn out and you were addicted. And some people, they overdose because they've been addicted for a long time. But in this one story of Nick and Jack Savage, they were two brothers. And, one was just finished his first year in college. One had just graduated high school, and the older brother had just come home, and the younger brother was graduating. They went to a party together. And that night they both took Oxycontin for the first time, and they both passed away. Two brothers in the same night. It's, one choice. It wasn't a long drawn out process where you think of, okay, for somebody to get to that, it takes years and you have to keep doing it. It can happen just by making that one choice. And so, I think there's just so much to talk about when we talk about how can we make the game better, but it's more, to me, it's like, how can we use the game to make the world better and make better people and make better communities? Because we're always waiting. Yeah, I know I was, even when I was in my own addiction, I was always waiting for somebody to come save me, somebody to come give me the answer. And it seems to me that we're all sitting around waiting for somebody to find the answer for us, when I really think we can all step up in even if it's just in small ways. But if we do this together, and it's people helping people, and we have the right message and people are all on the same page, that's where you're going to see real change. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
I really like the way you said that, obviously. And I kind of want to not shift it, but you said, you were waiting for somebody to come and be like, here it is. Here's your formula, here's your guidelines, you got to follow this. Like, I'm here for you. I want to talk about like relationships. I mean, you've said it many times before. I think I can't put words in your mouth, but I do think you have obviously a newfound appreciation for, your connections and your relationships you make. And I want to dive back into, your relationships and everything, or the people in your life, your loved ones in your life, while you were going through all of what you were going through. I read something about your father, walking in Vancouver trying to find you. And I mean, talk a little bit about maybe that relationship with your father, but also just the relationships, with your loved ones, and being able to, I hope you've been able to, reignite or, cultivate some of the relationships that you once had in your life. But just, dive into even just the relationships, and I mean, how much value you have in those now.
Smitty, that's a great question. And I'll actually share a story on here for the first time that I haven't even shared on my own podcast or on my own. Very few people know this story, and I'll get to it in a second. But you asked about my dad first. And so, to get a good background on my dad, he was a firefighter for 35 years. And at the time when I was homeless and he's searching for me on the streets, he was he was a firefighter back then. He actually retired early because he was so scared that he was going to come to a call of an overdose, because he was going to so many overdoses that it was going to be me one time. So he was having like PTSD, didn't even want to go to work, and he ended up retiring 3 years early. And my dad was my hero my whole life. Like, he coached me in hockey, single dad, he did it all. Like, can't even tell you. He's very, very, very well respected by everybody. Everybody loves my dad. He's a scout for the Everett Silvertips in the WHL too. So you can imagine that when I was being sentenced to jail and front page news in Vancouver, it was pretty hard for him to even leave the house, right? So our relationship was tarnished. I did every horrible thing that a drug addict does to their parents and to their loved ones, just like you see in the movies or you read about. That was me. So he cut me off, but he never really did give up hope. When I finally landed behind bars, he didn't come see me for like an entire year. And when he did, it was a really hard moment. You're literally sitting behind glass and, just like so many thoughts running through your mind, a year. Cause by that time I was a year kind of, sober in there thinking like, what the hell am I doing in here? So that was a really tough moment. But since then, since the last 2.5 years or so, my dad and I have, we talk every day. We have a fantastic relationship. He's wearing his puck support stuff in all the rinks and getting me speaking gigs and this and that. And he's playing kind of agent for me too. It's kind of cool. So things are really good there. As far as my relationship. This is a story I haven't told anybody. Really cool story if we have a couple minutes.
Absolutely.
So my kid, I have 2 kids out west, and I haven't seen them in 7 years. They wouldn't talk to me, as I kind of skipped through how bad my addiction really was. It was bad, if you didn't get the hint. So I hadn't talked to my kids in several years, reach out and they didn't want anything to do with me. And anyways, about I guess a year and a half ago, I finally got pictures of my son and my daughter, who are, my daughter will be 15 in March and my son's going to be 13 on Friday. And I got pictures, and of course my son's a hockey player. So the picture of him was him in his hockey gear, and it's him doing the pose. And, we have our puck support logo where this hockey player is kind of hunched over and kind of looks tired, right? Like he needs some support. And go figure, that picture is him in that stance. And it's not like he's doing it on purpose, but I put it up in my workshop where I do all my clothing line stuff. And I put it up there kind of like with my vision board stuff, right? My daughter's picture too, but in the picture, he's holding this TRU stick. And TRU is pretty new in the game of hockey. Like when I was away from hockey, I came back and I'm like, what the hell is this TRU hockey company? Like I didn't even know what it was, but it always stuck out to me. And about 6 months later, after I put that picture up, I got a phone call from the head of TRU Hockey, and they're like, hey, we want to sponsor you. We want to, do this. We want to do that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, what the hell? Like it was, surprising. I'd barely been out of jail at this point, and now I got this hockey company wanting to, believing in me and stuff. And anyways, I've been with TRU for over a year now, and this past the beginning of the summer, they released their new sticks or whatever. So a month before they come out in stores, they send them out to, you know, people like me or whoever else is doing it. And they send me custom sticks with my last name and everything else and whatever. And of course, I'm posting it on Instagram. And I got a message from my son, you know, Brody, who's like, "Hey, I saw your new sticks. Congratulations." And that was like the first real interaction that I've had with him in 7 years. It was over this true hockey stick. And you know, since that day, you know, I've talked to him every day since, you know, just texting with him every day. You know, it's small steps in the right direction, but he, you know, he lives in Vancouver and obviously loves the Vancouver Canucks, and his favorite player happens to be Bo Horvat. And, you know, I happened to be on the ice with Bo Horvat for the last 3 weeks before he was going to camp. And, you know, the one day I was like, you know, Bo keeps, he's like, "Hey, if your son needs anything, he wants to go to a game or whatever." And I'm, you know, I'm like, I don't want to, you know, take you up on that or whatever. I don't want to be that guy. But then the one day I was like, "Hey, you know, like it's his birthday coming up. You think maybe you have an extra stick lying around that you could sign?" And then the next day he brought it to the rink and he's got a pen ready and he's like, "Yeah, whatever you need." And so, you know, pretty cool, like, you know, for Bo to do that, but also pretty cool that this picture with this true hockey stick, if I feel like it kind of like manifested in a crazy way. I can't tell you how many times I looked at that picture. You know, and then, you know, here we are. So there's a long road there. I haven't shared that with too many people, but it's, you know, you asked about relationships and, you know, I burned every relationship in my life and I value relationships more than I ever have. You know, friends, family, you know, being accountable, and being honest. I still have a long ways to go. And, you know, I still struggle on my best days with my own mental health stuff and, you know, being organized and this is all new for me. So I think, you know, there's still certain times where it might look like, you know, I'm this or that, but you know, it's been a struggle in the last 2.5 years, but I'll tell you, my life is better than it's ever been. And without those relationships, without people lifting me up when I was ready to stand up, I don't know where I am. I'm probably not alive. So I owe so many people just a huge debt of gratitude and endless thank yous. And I'm going to pay it back by trying to be, you know, of service to people is best that I can.
Isn't that crazy when you're doing like I'm a believer in when you're doing like the right thing and what you're supposed to be doing, it kind of weird things like that happen. So I just think that's really cool that it comes to you and it shows you that you're doing the right thing, you're on the right path. And I mean, you said service, and I wanted to hit on that because you're obviously putting yourself out there and you're helping a lot of people with podcast, clothing line, even like passing on your knowledge to a younger generation on the ice as well. Like, what does that service mean to you? Like, is this kind of um I always think like when I'm in a tough bout with something or when I'm feeling down about myself, to get out and help other people. Is that something that you can relate with?
100%. Like I, I recognized at a very early age, and I just don't know why I didn't pay more attention to it and be my true authentic self. I think because I thought it was like not cool to be that way,
Yeah.
to be kind of like,
Hold on, I'm gonna stop you right there. Do you think that's a hockey thing or a sports thing?
maybe, yeah, because they're back, especially back when, you know, you're a few years younger than me, but back then, especially, it was such a macho sport, right? Like
Yeah.
I grew up watching Proby and Domi and these guys, and it was like there's superhumans to me. And you know, whether it's hockey's fault or not, I don't know, but you know, it just didn't seem cool to really be my true self. And you know, I even remember being like a young boy, just like holding the door for like an older
Yeah.
lady, like felt so good to see them smile and say thank you or whatever. And like I really try to make a point, like if I see somebody that's out and I can tell that they've really put in like time and effort to look good. And regardless of what they look like or how old they are, but I know that their intention was to like, they're trying to like, I will stop them and be like, hey, I just want to let you know that you look fantastic today. And even that is being of service to this world. Like people think, how can I be of service? I have to do this. It's small gestures. Just be kind to people. That's all you have to do. Right. And it's, I don't know. Like I spent the other day walking downtown Toronto. It was an expensive walk because whenever I see homeless people, I'm always giving them money. And I'm going to make a video on this later, actually, because people are always like, well, they're just going to use it on drugs. I'm like, I know, because I've been there. But at least, you know, there's this guy standing there begging for money. He's got a cup in his hand. Do you think he wants to be standing there begging for money? And people are always like, well, I'm going to buy them food. I'm going to buy them this. I'm telling you, they don't really want food. I've seen it and I've done it where people gave me food and it just goes in the garbage because I'm in my body is in such need of that I can't even think about eating. I'll throw up. I'll do whatever. So, you know, I gave this one guy some money and I put it in his thing and he said, thank you. And he literally ran down the street and into the subway. He ran to his drug dealer. And, you know, and I said to him, like, me giving him money or not giving him money was not going to stop him from being an addict. Right. My view on that, and it wasn't always this way, was like, does this guy have to be standing here begging for money for the next however long just to get what his body needs because he's physically addicted to it? I'm not going to stop him. I had a 5-minute conversation with him before I gave him the money. I don't just give them the money. I always try to like break through in some way. But it's an interesting topic for discussion that I've never really posed before, is like, where do you stand on that? Because by you not giving them money, you're not helping them. And people can be like, well, you're not helping them if you just enable their drug addiction. Well, I don't know. Like, if he doesn't get it, guess what happens if he doesn't get it in the hour or by the nighttime? Then he's breaking into cars or breaking into stores or causing chaos in the street and backing up the court system. Like, people have no idea what happened. So I don't know. It's off topic, but I had to get that out there.
No. So I think this kind of like might lead into my next question, because I think you are trying to offer hope. You are trying to offer, you know, some ounce of hope for yourself and for that person. I think it's at the end of the day, you know, you want to offer something that is going to be like the first step, you know. And I want to talk about the foundation of hope that I think you have because of your father. Obviously, you know, there's the stories now that have come out about your father and being a fireman and trying to go find you and still holding on to that hope. I really would love to know, like, how did you recoup that hope aspect in your life? You know, like being able to, in your mind, be like, I have the hope today. You know, I want to offer hope. I want hope to be a part of my life.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I wish I knew the answer so I could find that every single day and bring it every
Yeah.
single day, because you know, some days, like I said, are better than others. But you know, it doesn't take much for me to get grounded in a day when I, you know, just have to look at a picture of Mitch Fadden or Kevin Kurbison or Daniel Miner or any of these number of just hockey players that I knew or that I'm connected to their families, never mind all the people that I've lost that weren't hockey players or connected to the hockey community, you know, and just kind of understand how lucky I am still to be here. And I really took it for granted. I've told you guys this, but I didn't want to be here. Like,
Yeah.
I was hoping every time with the next one was going to kill me. I had no hope. I was homeless on Hastings, like sitting there going like, oh, like this is going to be my life forever until I die. And that's okay. I just accepted it. So I know what it feels like to have zero hope. Um, you know, I think for me, what really ignited that hope was me getting my skates on again after 8 years. And it was up here in Muskoka. And at the time, living in a place that was right on a lake. And I always say, if you've seen Mystery Alaska, when they skate down that ice path, it was kind of like that. I skated down like a driveway, then down this other way, right onto this lake. Hadn't had skates on for like 8 years and putted around for 5 minutes. And my whole soul just lit right up. And I knew in that moment that somehow I was going to have to find a way to get back involved in hockey. And I even at the time emailed the junior C. I still have the email at the local junior C team saying, I'll just sit in the stands and take stats. Nobody even needs to know I am there. I just want to contribute. Right. That was my mindset. So you ask about where the hope came from. It was like, maybe there's a hope that I can take stats for a junior C hockey team and not even have to let anyone know I'm there, because I don't want, the troubled guy being a part around the kids. Like, that was my mentality, but I had hope, right? That maybe I could take stats. And when that guy emailed me back, I didn't end up taking stats, by the way, but he said I could, and maybe I could even get on the ice. And I was like, whoa. I was like, and that was the first little glimmer of hope. And, like I said earlier too, people have just been unbelievably kind and supportive, and really just given me courage, because I took a shot and got vulnerable, and it could have backfired. But at that point, I had nothing to lose. I'd already lost everything anyways. But I mean, it could have went a totally different way. And what does that look like? Again, I'm probably not here. That's for damn sure. So that's where I find my hope, is that I know that there's other people looking at me too, like the Daniel Miner's family, and Isaac Lee's mom Marla, who just passed away of an overdose. When they see somebody else that they can get through it, and be that kind of glimmer of hope, is I've taken that on, and it's brought a lot of accountability. But having those people's support just means the world to me, for sure.
What you've obviously had some like big guests on your podcast, and I'm curious what the feedback from like the hockey world, maybe not even like your podcast guests, because I think a lot of them probably align with what you have gone through, or they're open to the whole, like, to being cognizant of your mental health. But like, what have you heard back from the hockey community? Like, has there been any negatives of that old school, like, just stop and play and battle through it, man up, that kind of thing? Or has it all been pretty good?
It's been pretty good, actually. I'm sure there's people saying stuff, not directly to me, and that's always going to happen to all of us. People are always going to talk. I don't care, but the vast majority still, like, on the daily, getting messages from people, and so many guys that had not played hockey, and now they're like, oh, I put my skates back on, and I'm playing beer league again, or whatever. I love those messages. Those are my favorite ones, when people have found that love for the game again, like I have. Like, I love hockey more now than I ever have in my entire life. I love, like, analyzing it now and, like, figuring stuff out. I wish I was like this when I played, but I just love it. But yeah, it's interesting. I'll share a quick story. So, do you know the Key to Bala?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was at the Key this summer a couple times for concerts, and as if anyone knows, it's kind of like a party scene, and I don't drink or anything, so it's kind of annoying for me to go to places like that. But the music was so damn good. But I was it's right on Lake Muskoka. It's a beautiful venue. It's a cool spot. I was out on the deck, and I was just hanging with some people, and this guy came beelining, like, across the deck to me, and I could tell he was a hockey player. I had no idea who he was, and I'm not going to share his name. But once he said his name, I knew exactly who he was. Um, but he basically he literally broke down and cried on the deck to the Key to Bala. And he was like, I can't even this is what he said. I can't even quantify what your podcast is doing for the game of hockey. He goes, you might not know. He goes, you might not hear a lot of it. He goes, but a lot of us are watching, and, you're making an impact. And he was, telling me how he's struggling with drugs and alcohol. And this is a guy that plays in the NHL, right? Just for example, and not anybody that, I ever met before or was on the ice with this summer. This was a guy who was visiting, not even from Canada, believe it or not, actually, but might as well be Canadian. But so you asked me the feedback, and that's not the only time that's happened. It's just a quick story. So I think, it's not necessarily my podcast. I think it's just when people can see people being vulnerable, and that, happens here on your guys' show as well. And it's going to take an absolute army of people having conversations on podcasts, off podcasts, in groups, one-on-ones with people, like checking in on your friends, all of that stuff. But like I said, I've been very, very, very fortunate from the top down, with the support and sort of the feedback that I've gotten overall. But always looking to grow and as a person, and find ways that I can contribute more overall to the goodness of just humanity in general. I think we all need to be seeking those answers.
Yeah. Check in with your friends, eh, Ty? I got it
Yeah,
on my
you
tab.
got it. So as you have these conversations now, and as you look back and as you reflect, unpacking these layers. I mean, as you come out of jail and start to want to figure your life out again and strap your skates on again and all this. I mean, there's also a lot of trauma to unpack within yourself. How did you find navigating those paths? Was it a case of reflecting? I don't even know where I'm kind of going with this question, but is it a case of, you're reflecting chronologically, you're reflecting on like the hardest parts, or you're reflecting like how did you even start? Because like we said, there's a lot to unpack, and there's even a lot you missed in your story. I mean, I'm sure it's an everyday thing still, but as you started your reflection of all that you've been through over the past, 12 to 15 years, was it as difficult as you thought? Was it a lot, like how did that process go for you?
To be honest with you, in hindsight, the however many years it was of struggling before dealing with it was a hell of a lot harder than actually having to just deal with it. Not to say
Yeah.
that it wasn't hard, but those years of carrying that around, not telling anybody, that's a million times harder. At least it was for me, than having to actually sit down, unpack it, and work through it. That also wasn't easy. I knew that I was going to have to take some steps, that I didn't have all the answers myself, that I didn't have to deal with it deal with it by myself. Um, it took, a month for me to pick up the phone and actually, get a counselor and start to do some sexual abuse trauma counseling. And, we focused on some other areas in there too, and did like an extra 6 weeks of it. And, that was like early on. It was really important for me because I didn't have a big support network. I was just building, a few episodes into my podcast, a few people support me, but not really a support network. Definitely not of people that I necessarily felt close to or trusted. Because again, I was coming out of this crazy life where I didn't trust anybody, didn't trust myself. And it was nice to be able to do it actually, because it was COVID. It was nice to be able to do it over like the computer, instead of, for me anyways, that initially to have to like sit there and like I felt really uncomfortable talking about getting into the details of stuff. So I found it really valuable for me to be on the computer. Some people might find it better to be in person, but I was able to really start to dig in and share with her, in detail, some of the stuff that had happened that I'd really never told anybody. And then we were able to like start to work through that. Like I said, I did, 12 weeks of that. And then after that, by that time, I had already started to develop my own support network within social media, within the community. Started to talk to my family members more about stuff. So I got myself to a place where I wasn't relying so much on this counselor, where she gave me the tools. We worked through the initial stuff. And now it's my responsibility to take it into my life and start to try to use it and implement it into my life, so that I don't go back to those places of darkness. And Tyler, you said it, man, like there's still days, like there's still flashbacks, there's still stuff that comes up, but never do I ever sit there and be like, oh, I'm gonna go use drugs because I can't handle this. That's never an option for me right now. And I'll never say never, but my mind just doesn't think like that. And my mind doesn't think to really escape to anything, which is kind of a good sign, because early on it was like, oh, I'm going to go escape and play hockey all the time. Then it was drugs. And of course I still have my little escapes and my things that I do for myself, but I also have other ways that I can work through things if I can't grab a hockey stick right away, or whatever the case is. So things can change very, very quickly. When you're dealing with stuff like this, you can feel great one minute and not so great the next, being bipolar and different things. So it's tricky to navigate the waters, but I'm telling you, if I can do it, anyone out there can do it. It just takes work. And if you fall down, you just pick yourself back up. And, tomorrow there's always there's a new day tomorrow. Right. But I really try to live in the present. And that's something that maybe we could talk about another time. But I was always worrying about the past and always worrying about the future. You asked about, finding hope. My hope was always for the future. Like, oh, I want my life to be this, or I want
Yeah.
this. And it was like, why am I worrying about this when I have like to get there, I need to do stuff here now, and I need to appreciate here now. And so again, practicing that every day more and more. I'm so off topic today, but hey.
Those are like, what stands out to you about when you were coming up playing and stuff, like from what you know now, things that you wish you would have learned at a younger age, where it could just be mindset things, could be like how you treat your body, like certain things with that, like even just like the ability to walk into a party. And obviously you're going to be going to parties when you're coming up playing junior hockey, and you're going to be, it's whatever, but like just approaching those situations a little more responsibly. Because I was the same way, where I blacked out every party. I wanted to be that guy that we could tell stories about the next morning. And I just know that was such a mask for attention, or just whatever it was, which is part of the hockey culture. What, like, if you understand my question, like just abilities that kids can learn to be able to feel comfortable in those positions and not have to do damage to themselves.
Yeah, there's so much there. I did a lot of things because, you know, you can call it peer pressure, you can call it wanting to fit in, call it whatever you want. You know, I wish that I would have, and going back to what I talked about earlier, trying to like be okay with who I really was, and my authentic self, and not being scared to just be me. It was like, oh, I'm going to try to be like that guy. Even anything like, oh, I guess I better dress like that guy, or I better, you know, talk like that guy. I got to better drink like that guy or those guys. And, you know, and along the way, I never really let myself be me and explore that. And, you know, and by doing so, I started to make decisions that, you know, I probably would have never made. And, you know, some people can make those decisions and try something once and maybe nothing happens and maybe they only try it once. Then there's those decisions where somebody can try something once and be on a lifelong of addiction, or in a worst case, even die. So, you know, I wish that I just would have, for me, looking back in hockey, I wish that I would have understood where I was in time in relation to, yes, it was a far climb to get to where I was going, but I was right there, and I didn't understand what it really took to be a pro, to be a hockey player, to learn the areas of the game that I had no idea about. Winning a battle, I couldn't care less to win a battle. Give me the puck, I want to put it through your legs and get around you. Like that was my mentality, you know. Blocking shots, being good in the D zone, staying out after practice, working on one-timers or taking pucks on the walls, like, you know, introducing yourself to people, shaking their hands and looking them in the eye, not walking by them and putting your head down, trying not to get seen. Like, it's all stuff that I did. So there's a lot that I wish I would have done differently, and had a greater understanding of, you know, what sort of my character was being presented as, if it makes any sense.
Yeah, I think that's like perfect. I just had a quick thought, and I mean, we have so much focus on instantly when you get on a team. There's so much focus on like team identity, and I really, obviously that is such a big thing. You know, team culture, that environment in a room. And I mean, I think there is also so much focus on just like our identities as hockey players and like what you can bring to the table. But like, now that I think about it, man, like I think it's so important for like each guy to like really be able to embrace their own individual identity. And I don't know how that looks. I don't know if it's a case of, you know, you sit around a fire and sing Kumbaya and tell your identity and what you want to be and all this. But I think it's so important now to just like, it is a team game by all means. The team comes first by all means. But at the end of the day, I mean, being able to really embrace your individual identity and like have that culture started to be embraced. And I think, I mean, that's, I'm not saying that's the ticket by any means, because I've only played, you know, how many years of hockey, but it's just something that came to my mind because it kind of relates to you, you know, just about how you wish you were able to look back and be like, I embraced my authentic self as a hockey player, but also just as a human being, and being able to be embraced by your teammates in that same sense. I mean, I think really does cultivate that love for the game, but also just that love for your surroundings and being at the rink. And yeah, I don't know, that was my ramble.
Oh, well, it kind of goes into, like, I don't know. The way that I see it is that when I was in junior, I wasted so much time. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, so much time.
Yeah.
Go to the rink, practice for 2 hours. Okay, curfew at 11. That's it. What the hell were we doing? I don't even want to talk about it today. We can, but what a waste of time. Okay. Hanging
It's the
out
same now,
bunch of
man.
pointless crap. When I look at it and I'm like, there is a lot of time wasted there that could be used for value, like building these young hockey players up as people, because the vast majority, even in the CHL, okay, they're not going to play in the NHL, but they're all going to have to go on to live in the real world. Even the guys who play in the NHL, guess what? Play in the NHL 20 years. Eventually, if you want to keep playing, you're going to end up playing in charity games or men's league. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. So eventually it happens. So all this focus is like, oh, you're playing hockey. You're playing hockey. Oh, he's a hockey player. He can't get a job. He can't go to school. He had practice today. He's tired. Come on. I'm so over. I was that guy. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a hockey player, man. Like, I'm tired today. I had practice. I'm gonna go play video games. Like, like, come on. Like, there's so much time that's wasted. And that's the way that I see it, is like, maybe that time could have been me finding myself, or other people finding their true selves, outside of trying to maintain this image as a hockey player, just hanging out with all these guys doing dumb crap all day. Like, that was, maybe some guys want to do that, but what if there was an opportunity for people to explore themselves, hockey players to explore themselves away from the rink a little bit more, where it was like, yeah, when you leave the rink, that's at the rink. You don't need to go home and obsess about being a hockey player. And yes, you need to treat your body and do your training and all that stuff, but you're allowed to have a life outside of a hockey player, where for too long, I think it was looked at like, if you're not all in hockey, then you're not in. Like, you shouldn't even be talking about doing anything else, because hockey should be everything. Well, I think that's dangerous.
Yeah, because you even said like masking pain with hockey, because then when hockey's not going well, now what do you have? You're not going to be able to and then that's, like, you see a lot of guys like substance abuse, and then like, it's, so you hit the nail on the head there. Like, I'm recently finding that out, because even as you go through the NHL, like, your schedule doesn't change. It's still the same as junior hockey, but now, like, I have a baby boy, and so my time is going into something. But like, I did notice that when I was 26, 27, 28, like, you still have that. It's dangerous. And like, we started this podcast because, for me, I wanted to work my brain in some way. But like, I don't know. I just feel like there is so much time, and guys have so much knowledge and so much experience to be able to pass that on. It's so important. But then, like, you go into the rink the next day, and you kind of have to be a little bit like worried that guys are going to be chirping you about it, or like they're judging you. They're like, oh, you think like you know everything about mental health. I'm like, no one said that to me, but like, sometimes I think that maybe it's my own like insecurity about doing it. But like, I don't know. I just feel like there's untapped territory there with guys passing on information or doing things of service.
Really good point there. And kudos to you, and Smitty, great job on the show too. But kudos to you, Riley, because you're in the thick of it right now, where there's a lot kind of more on the table for you to be so vulnerable. And so huge kudos to you. And I think that if you're ever having those thoughts, just know that even if there are people thinking that, there's so many more people that you're helping by doing this. Like, it doesn't even matter. And oftentimes those people who are judging are some people that need help too, regardless of who they are.
Sure.
It's usually the way that it goes. And I think as you guys carry on and do this, you guys are just gonna break down barriers for so many people, and really help them navigate their own lives. And to your point about knowing everything about mental health, there's nobody that knows everything about mental health. And
what do you mean, Riley? I signed up to do the show because I thought you knew everything, dude. Like,
right? Like, even my Instagram's like mental health hockey. It's just so it's like catchy. So you're like, oh, what's that? I'm thinking about changing it, because I did it when I had 0 followers, and I would, nobody knew who I was. But now it's like, okay, well, it's kind of like whatever. But I'm sure people think that too. They're like, oh, well, that's not this or that's not that. It's like, well, if it gets your attention, it gets you even thinking about your own mental health. And even if you think that you know more about me than whatever, and it's starting a conversation, well, then hell, like, at least it's a conversation about mental health. I'm up for the debate, or not even to be there. Like, it sometimes it takes controversy in a small way to get people talking. So it's, just keep doing it, man. It's great what you guys are doing here.
Yeah. Wow. That was great.
It's nice too, like
I love
knowing
that.
that I think you probably deal with this too, and I think you've even touched on it already, but like I feel like Ty can probably chime in, but just by us having these conversations, it makes you almost like open to other people. Like other people automatically think that you want to talk about it, which is great. Like I would love to have this conversation over having a conversation about like, oh, like I don't want to be rude, but like what was your favorite team you played for? Or like,
Yeah.
you know, um, so I don't know. I just find by doing this, you almost like put yourself into a lot deeper, more meaningful conversation, and I think that's a really cool thing. And the more it happens, more people start doing this, the better the conversations are. The more people are learning, the more people are open to changing, and I think it's just a snowball effect.
I I 100% agree, but I just go back to the point where, like, you know, you're still actively playing and putting yourself out there. I hope you can take a second to just appreciate, you know, how, no, I'm serious. Like, I'm dead serious, right? Like,
Yeah.
and what you guys are doing, like, overall with the whole platform with TorchPro and everything, it's really cool to see. Like, it's awesome. And I think it's just the beginning. Obviously, you guys know that there's probably big plans for the future, but I think it's so important. It's so important. I love what you guys are doing here. And you know, Smitty's been on my show. Riley, I think you're coming on next week too. So it's these conversations carry over, right? And I think it's important. It's always been important for me, anyways, for people to like support people. Like if you're doing something
Yeah.
similar with the same goals and everything else, like why can people not just support each other? Like why is like it's not a contest, especially when we're talking about like trying to just impact positive change. It's like if you see something and you're like, oh, that's pretty good, fuck, share it, you know, like share it, like, you
Yeah.
know, show people, like comment on it, whatever it is. um I don't know, I just think there, if we get more people rallying, then more lives are going to be saved, because we're losing people every single day. Probably while we did this podcast here in Canada, I bet you there was at least one overdose and one suicide. I would guarantee it. So
Mhm.
that's just the cold harsh facts. And the more people start talking and normalizing this stuff and empowering people to actually want to get help, um, that's what we need to be focusing our efforts on, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, last question for me. This is yeah, kind of a unique question because I know how much puck support means to you, obviously, and I know that puck support is, you know, your thing, you know, and I think that's I'm the same way, like with Not Alone or just like public speaking, like it's just like I feel like it's my I have a hard time saying purpose because you know, purpose is a weird relationship with my own self, but like I do find that like puck support, you know, like it's just creating a community like puck support for you, obviously, I think would be very therapeutic, but also in a sense, I mean, is it tough? Is it tough to, you know, obviously see how many people, how many individuals, and not just in the hockey community, but you know, for your thing in the hockey community are losing their lives, and how we've talked about, you know, the relationships with your triggers, and I mean, we talk so much about relationships with people and relationships with, you know, your surrounding people, but I think even relationships with triggers and relationships with, you know, making sure that you know what your triggers are and how best to deal with it. I mean, I'm not saying that every time you see somebody that is unfortunately lost to suicide or addiction in the hockey community, it instantly triggers you, but I just want to know, you know, acknowledging all these unfortunate passings and gravitating towards these families and gravitating towards making sure that you are grieving these amazing individuals that we are losing. Has that been difficult for you? Because let's be honest, it's not an easy position to be in. You know, it's not something that I'm sure you were like, I, you know, it isn't something where you're like, I get to do this, but also it's something where it's like, this is hard as well. So like, talk to me about like that process and the relationship, even just with, you know, with puck support.
Yeah, it's a great privilege and honor to be in the position that I'm in. But as you said, I'm not going to lie, it is hard. You know, helping the families navigate, especially the ones who have lost their lives to overdose. I've found that they've gravitated towards me a lot, trying to understand the life of their son, as an addict, and what it maybe would have looked like for them to get help, or could they have gotten help, or why they were doing things, or could they have done more. You know, I've spent many hours crying, holding them at different times, in person, on the phone, speaking at, I just spoke at one of the hockey players' memorial golf tournaments who passed away from suicide. Sorry, Nick Smith. Having to give a speech and see all the family members crying and all that stuff. Like it weighs heavily on me, but I know that, you know, there's nothing that I can do or anyone can do to bring these people back, but there is a way to help the families and to help other people by sharing their story. And I think too often in the past, you know, you see obituaries and it's, you know, they passed away suddenly and people are like, well, it's either this or that or something. And you got to ask yourself why that is. And it's because the stigma surrounding suicide and overdose is so high, and family members left to deal with it. It's not a good place, is all I can say. It's really, really, really difficult. I can't imagine. I don't know what it feels like to have it firsthand, but I've seen the damage. And like I said, spent many hours helping them navigate through it. The other side of it too is the people who are currently in addiction or really battling mental health that send messages. And you know, I try to help as many people as I can, but you know, there's only so much time in a day. And you know, sometimes, you know, we all have our own stuff going on, just trying to manage my own life. And it's tough because if there's a message and, you know, I haven't seen it for a couple of days, it weighs on me pretty heavily because it's like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, I didn't mean to miss that or whatever. And I'm not trying to like boast or anything like that, but you know, I don't have a huge social media following, but it seems that most of the ones who follow me are people who, you know, have gone through similar things or in and out of crisis or want to talk and share their story versus just following. And, you know, because I'm, you know, Kylie Jenner and made a new lipstick and she's got 14 million followers, she's not really messaging people. People are probably not messaging her with all these, you know, maybe they are, but who knows? But it's heavy, right? Like it's heavy stuff. And learning how to take care of myself through it and also put myself in the best position to be able to help the people is really important to me, and try to help them find their way, because you know there is not one answer for anyone, but sometimes just being there for someone and letting them talk and listening can be the difference between life and death. So
You're preaching to the choir, and I think yeah, there's so much value in balance, and I now appreciate balance a little bit much more, you know, being able to, like you said, tread around, not obviously not undermining what you're going through while trying to, you know, make sure that you're taking the time as well. So I mean, I'm sure every single person that you've talked to has so much love and respect, as do we. And Riles, I don't know if you had anything else, but I just wanted to
No,
obviously, yeah, go ahead, because
no, I'm good. I mean, that was great. I was curious what my last question was who you saw at Kita Bala this summer.
oh, Our Lady Peace and Sam
Oh,
Roberts. Our Lady Peace, Sam
nice.
Roberts. Yeah, it was pretty good. I was supposed to go to 54-42, but I had to coach hockey instead. So I'd
Yeah.
rather be on the ice than at a concert, believe it or not. But
That's Our Lady Peace. I haven't heard them in a while, but they have some great songs.
oh,
And
it was great, man. It was like going back to middle school.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
fantastic. It was great.
I remember
Yeah.
Superman's Dead.
Oh yeah.
What was the other one? Peace or I don't know. Yeah, there's some
Clumsy, clumsy too.
Clumsy. That's the one.
That's a
Yeah.
good one. Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, man. We really appreciate you coming on. Like your story is incredible, and I actually just got a text from Gaggy. I was telling him that that we're having you on. I just wanted to, like a little blurb or whatever, and he's just like said, great dude. He's very impressed with the passion for the game and trying to build happy, resilient athletes. So there's some kind words from a solid NHLer. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
He's been incredible. That guy gave me an opportunity of a lifetime this summer, and I'll never ever forget it. And yeah, it's just incredible. Love the game of hockey, man. It's given me my life back.
yeah.
But thanks for having me, fellas. I really appreciate it. And like man, just you guys both just keep going together, individually, everywhere you go, whatever you got to do, stay on the path and keep being yourselves and sharing the message of hope. And Riley, play hockey for as long as you can, man, because when it's gone, you'll miss it. Maybe
The old hips, just the
Yeah.
hips got to stay with me.
The hips do not lie. Brady,
No.
we madly appreciate your vulnerability, your story, your impact, your just the power within your story is profound. It's so yeah, we can't thank you enough. And this was an absolute pleasure, my man.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.